No, the new guys have been surprisingly orderly.
Okay.
All of the photographers are desperate to try to catch a story to try to slander ICE. All the photographers there are trying to catch the most dramatic moments and whatnot. And I mean, these scenes do look very dramatic, but no, for by and large part, things are extremely orderly. They're not beating up or I don't know. They're not hanging. They're not killing. They're not assaulting any of the people who are there detaining. If you leave in an orderly way, they'll escort you gently, frankly, in my estimation.
Hey guys, Tate Brown here, holding it down for Tim Pool. I have a great interview here with Elaad Eliahu, our very own Elaad Eliahu. He has been on the ground in New York at the courthouses covering the ICE deportation operation. They've been hanging out in the courthouses and grabbing the illegals. It's been quite something to watch. So got a great interview here. Check it out.
My name's Elaad Eliahu. I'm a White House correspondent here at Timcast. On my off time, I cover immigration and the Trump administration's new immigration initiatives and how they play out around the country. So they've recently been trying to obviously up their numbers, and the President Trump administration... Are we Gucci? So part of the new initiatives of trying to increase their numbers have been DHS and ICE agents going to different immigration courthouses around the country, mainly in New York City and California is where they have the highest numbers. And they are waiting outside of courtrooms of court proceedings for illegal immigrants. And oftentimes they are taking them before their proceedings have fully finished because they are eligible for so-called expedited removals. So the administration and DHS is prioritizing those who came here in the past 2 years or those who have a criminal record, and then after their court hearings, they are grabbing them, and then you'll see many of these dramatic scenes outside of the courtrooms going on. And despite these very dramatic scenes that I film while at these courthouses, only 5 to 10 illegal immigrants are being detained per day at these different courthouses. So you're seeing that. And actually, this video, why is this important right now? This is making national news because this video in particular is of a man who was actually separated from his wife, who chose to resist arrest with him and his family. So they all chose to grab each other. The agents were forced to forcibly remove them from one another. And then if we want to scroll down to the next clip, DHS agents, while being physically agitated by the woman, also who is an illegal immigrant, who was frustrated with her husband being taken away. This DHS agent reacted to him being grabbed and shoved this woman to the ground. This got a lot of pushback initially. I believe the spokesperson for DHS, I believe her name is Tricia McLaughlin. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. She said something along the lines of this being unbecoming of ICE agents. Despite that, he is actually back on duty. So 26 Federal Plaza, where these ICE agents are hanging outside of these immigration courts and doing these arrests, has increasingly become a flashpoint. Democrats and activists are often going there to protest what they see as poor treatment of people going through the court process, poor treatment of people in the processing facility on another floor where they take them to prepare them to be taken to a detention facility to ultimately be deported from. And so that's why, we're seeing a lot more of these scenes out of these courtrooms.
Yeah, I mean, so from my perspective, I was going through it earlier. I was showing some of the polling as how deporting illegal immigrants and illegal criminals is extremely popular, even with Democrats. This is a very popular position. So going into the election, you had the broadcasters, I think is what you would call them. That's like your Rogans, your Tim Dillons, your Theo Vaughns. They were behind Trump. They were supporting Trump. These sorts of things. And then as soon as videos like this started coming out, and a lot of them were your videos. Everyone just soured really quickly, and they were like, "Oh, but this is so mean." These sorts of things. I mean, how else is ICE? From my perspective, I'm sitting here. I'm like, how else is ICE supposed to conduct these operations, especially when they're not getting any support from these blue state and blue city governments?
Totally. And there's a few things at play here. So these are some of the more dramatic scenes. Most of the detainments and arrests don't look like this. If we wanted to scroll through some of the others, most of them don't look like this. But it's the power of video. It's very potent, the power of capturing live arrests. We could be sympathetic to criminals if we see, how they're treated after they're arrested. So this is ultimately, I think, the safest and most reasonable way to go about it oftentimes, because if they've said, I believe Todd Lyons has said that if they're not going to get them at these courthouses, or I believe it wasn't Todd Lyons, it was the border czar, Tom Homan, who said that if they're not going to get them at the courthouses in an orderly way, they're going to be forced to go into the neighborhoods. If they're not able to go after them in the jails, then they're going to have to be going through the neighborhoods and then really break neighborhood trust with law enforcement, which would lead to a more detrimental situation.
I mean, you've been covering this for a while now. Had things ramped up after the big, beautiful bills passing? I mean, have we seen a thicker presence of federal agents?
So the number of agents there, frankly, actually hasn't increased since the passing of the big, beautiful bill. The number of detainments at these immigration courts has actually gone down since the President Trump administration has began. And this is because as they began taking more and more people out from these courthouses, more people have been suing and they're caught up in a lot of litigation. Also, there's issues with people with the processing facility allegedly not having enough room to house all the people that they were being detaining. So between that and a couple of other factors, they've definitely been decreasing the numbers of daily detainments, at least outside of the courthouses that I've witnessed.
Is it evident? Because I love ICE. I'm a big ICE backer. There's no question about it. But there is something to be said of they've had an influx of agents, a lot of them not coming from law enforcement backgrounds in some cases. So there's been accusations that some of these arrests have been sloppy. I mean, obviously the guy like hit sticking the lady was dramatic, and a lot of people are saying, okay, maybe I don't know. That's neither here nor there. Have you seen? Do these ICE agents feel? Do you see a lot of sloppiness in a lot of instances?
I'm surprised at the lack of sloppiness.
Yeah.
The person who was actually shoved the woman to the ground was a supervisor and was hired way before any of these recent big beautiful bill or the signing bonus or what have you. That guy wasn't getting in any of that. This gentleman in the plaid shirt, who's now back on duty. No. The new guys have been surprisingly orderly.
Okay.
All of the photographers are desperate to try to catch a story to try to slander ICE. All the photographers there are trying to catch the most dramatic moments and whatnot. And I mean, these scenes do look very dramatic, but no, for by and large part, things are extremely orderly. They're not beating up or I don't know. They're not hanging. They're not killing. They're not assaulting any of the people who are there detaining. If you leave in an orderly way, they'll escort you gently, frankly, in my estimation.
Yeah.
If you go scroll down a little bit more, most arrests, if you could keep going, those are some of the protests outside. This is the very dramatic arrest, but most of the arrests are actually extremely orderly. Keep going. Go like 3 or so posts down if you could, please. Like many look like that one. Something like this. So the guy will ask for his court papers. The agent will have a packet in his hand where it actually has all the information of the illegal migrant. They'll make sure it's the correct person, and then they'll just orderly escort them down the hall. Sometimes I'll try to ask them what country they're from. They usually don't tell me which, either because they're embarrassed.
Excuse me, sir, what country are you from?
Or don't speak English.
In such cases.
So yeah, but there's been a lot of consternation from the left over this because, again, they think this discourages people from showing up to court. They're uneasy with these agents being masked. I believe Tim was also uneasy with these agents being masked. Some agents also used to obscure their ICE badges until like the last moment, which could be a concern for some people. But I believe this is actually, by and large part, the most orderly way to go about this. Here's another example that I'm talking about. This really demonstrates what's going on there. These are hallways around courtrooms. Most of the people who go to their court hearings aren't being detained, but there is this sense of, this illegal migrant woman with their presumably American child walking down these hallways with ICE agents just lining the halls at a sort of intimate, like masked agents. And there is a sort of unease. I will say I don't. I talked to Todd Lyons about this, the acting director of ICE. He said, he doesn't like it, but he doesn't want to encourage, things that could promote violence against his agents. And I understand that, but these guys are all armed and, you're getting a nice signing bonus. And this isn't an easy job, but it's an important job. And I don't want people in law enforcement to get attacked. But I think there is this uneasiness of not being able to, identify. I don't want people masked up. I didn't like it when Antifa masked up. I don't like it when the left masks up. And I understand that the consequences will be some of these ICE agents getting doxxed, but guess what? There are also just a handful of ICE agents who don't wear the masks and have dealt with the consequences, and they've been fine. So, for example, this short little girl, Serge, in the video before this, that one, yeah, you see this short little woman. She's not wearing a mask. If you want to scroll to the beginning of this, yeah, that woman is, I believe, also a supervisor. She's not wearing a mask. And, and then the guy who shoved the other lady, he wasn't wearing a mask ultimately. And I think you lose trust. And it's very bad optically
Yeah, well, I mean,
And I understand
Yeah.
the need to protect our agents, but look, you're strapped in New York City. Nobody in New York City is allowed to have a gun. All of these guys are still armed.
well, I think the problem is like, look, if we're trying to, we need mass deportations. There's tens of millions, upwards of 30, 40 million people to some estimates of legal immigrants in the country. And it's like, I'm not so concerned about the trust of the institutions. I just need them to conduct their job as efficiently as possible. And if they're getting doxxed and there's people showing up to their houses and giving them a hard time, that impedes the operation, the mass deportation operation. So it's like, I'm willing in the short term to make people feel a little uneasy if what we're trying to do is get millions and millions of legal immigrants out. I'm okay with them doing these sorts of things. And it's like, if you don't want a mask, that's great if you want the smoke, but it's like, look, I don't need these guys to be thought leaders. I don't need these guys to be, brave and putting their face out there. I need them to get the job done, right? I need them to get illegals out of the country. So I mean, I don't need to test them. I don't need them to be, like I said, I don't need them to be thought leaders. I just need them to, and I really don't care if it makes people feel uneasy. If you're here illegally, you should feel uneasy no matter what, because you're here illegally, you're breaking the law.
Totally. I ultimately think it's counterproductive, though, because if it's DHS and ICE agents' goal to try to deport as many people possible, then they need to stay popular and writ large among the populace and politicians while they do so, or they won't be able to fulfill that goal. So I think this is a small... I think most ICE agents would be fined if they were unmasked. As I said, there are already a handful of agents who chose not to wear the mask. I've spoke to agents both who do and don't wear masks, and one person told me, I'd be popular if I got doxxed in my neighborhood. Like they all appreciate agents there, but I do think that it does give people an easy way to sort of slander them. If you're not proud of your work, why are you wearing, like, if you're proud of your work, why are you hiding your face? I think all the arguments that people use against Antifa and the far left hiding their face really does also apply here for law enforcement.
Well, I think at this point, to your first point about keeping popularity up, of keeping public opinion of ICE popular, I think at this point everyone that has an opinion on ICE has they've come to a conclusion whether they like them or not. I don't think there's anybody that's like on the fence about ICE, so I don't really know if there's much more that ICE could do to really, win over new supporters, I guess is how
No, I will say no. I mean, I think they could lose supporters over this. I think there's a percent of people, maybe small, maybe in the teens, maybe in the 10 to 20% of people who support law enforcement, but do genuinely feel uncomfortable with masked law enforcement doing their job. And I'll give you an example. Our boss, Tim Pool, he feels very uncomfortable. He said before on the show, right. I don't know if he'll change his mind. He changes his mind often. But he said, like, no, this is bullshit. And the ICE agents shouldn't wear these masks. And, they really do look like a form of secret police in some way. I totally support their what they're trying to do. And they're just enforcing the law. They don't write the law. And I think it's ultimately hurting their cause. The masks, like some of these videos, here's the thing too. As some on the left have said, I don't know if we caught it in the second part of the audio or what have you. Some people say that the intimidation is part of what they're trying to do. Part of the like factoring in,
right?
Like the cruelty is the point, I think is what the liberals and left says about this. So if that is true, then the masks are actually playing into that.
But I think ultimately we saw with, and it's unfortunate this is the environment we're in, but we've seen that the left is willing to use violence as a means to shut people up and to impede on their opponent's goals. And so I'm looking, I guess I'll go back to my first point, which is my goal ultimately is to get as many illegal immigrants out of the country. And as if this causes them to lose, 10, 20% of the country support wise, I think that's worth it, because the alternative is, you don't know what could happen to these guys or their families. We just can't put it past. We're seeing coordination. With the Charlie Kirk murder, there's now a lot of people speculating there was coordination. Who knows what these black bloc operations in New York and Chicago and in Portland, they probably have a list of these guys and their families and these sorts of things. And it's like, whatever these guys can do to insulate themselves from violence, vigilante violence, I think is worth it, because ultimately, they've had trouble. They've had some difficulties hiring in certain places, and I want to maintain as many agents as possible. And I don't want to see these guys getting roughed up by these leftist activists.
I think the roughed up would be in reverse, but it's
like we saw with Kirk, and we've seen with others, is they're willing to go there. They're willing to harm these guys, and ultimately, I just don't see why they need to unmask like for public. They're deport these people that would be uneasy with ICE agents being masked. They're going to be uneasy with them anyway because they're doing something they don't support, which is they're
Totally. I will
people.
say that people who make the argument that ICE agents shouldn't be wearing masks are almost exactly the same people who don't care about the far left and Black Bloc and Antifa wearing masks and using that as a way to protect their identities while committing crimes. So that is on me.
There's probably a narrow group of people that just don't want masking across the board, whether it be Antifa or
I think there's like a
whatever.
libertarian leaning type who's like anti-law enforcement writ large, anti-authority figure writ large who feels that way. I will say though, after the dramatic video of the gentleman shoving the woman to the ground, which went viral and many Democrats, Congress people ended up commenting on, that guy was put on leave, ultimately brought back. But I spoke to some of the agents around that gentleman and after the fact of that video going out, and he told me there were efforts to dox all of them.
Yeah.
All of the guys in the video. And I said, obviously, like, of course, and that's unfortunate. And, you know, you guys are masked up, but like, there are consequences that kind of come with the job. I'm not saying that a consequence should be getting doxed.
Yeah. I think the government should protect their agents.
Should regular police wear masks too? Because some people will threaten to dox.
Yeah, I mean,
police
but they're not conducting as abrasive of an operation as mass deportations. Sure. Like the police they're doing the same thing they've done for hundreds of years. Versus what ICE is doing is actually, unfortunately, is unprecedented, which is mass deportations. That hasn't been done since like Eisenhower, and this at least in the scale that the Trump administration is envisioning. And so, yeah, I mean, they are conducting an operation that is much more abrasive. There's a large proportion of the country that really just wants to kill them. And so it's like, I'm sitting here like, yeah, I mean, I think this is, at least in the short term, the solution until Tim made a good point, which is he just doesn't like that there's an environment in which federal agents have to mask for their lives. Like that just shows you that the country is in a position that is just untenable, which is that they have to mask for their lives. Like,
well, frankly,
we should be able to crack down on these people preemptively.
Anybody advocating for violence against ICE agents, I mean, should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. So that's why I ultimately think, you know, it would be dumb of somebody to try. And if they do, then we have law enforcement answers to that.
Right.
Do you think cruelty is part of the point, so-called here?
No. I mean, that just doesn't really track with what they're trying to do. I mean, the cruelty is typically because of them fighting back. That's when, or cruel, when it looks cruel.
That's what every arrest
it gets physical.
Who people resist looks like.
Yeah,
when you resist, this is what the arrest will look like.
When it gets physical, then they have to get physical in return, and then that's when the clips just look ugly of them like hit sticking someone. It's like, well, I mean, that's what you have to do. I don't think these ICE agents really want to be like going out and just like, you know, hit sticking random illegals. Like that's not, especially if they're masking, they're already concerned about, you know, of getting doxxed. Why would they make it worse for themselves? And like you were saying, that's why I asked the question earlier where I was like, I mean, are these guys sloppy? And you're saying no. I mean, because that's what I've seen. These guys seem to actually be really professional, especially in their new hires, and I think part of that is because they know the pressure. They know that there's a lot of eyeballs on them, and
they have a million cameras on them.
Yeah,
people hoping they're about to make a mistake so they can like take a picture and sell to the New York Times.
Right.
But I think frankly they've been very orderly.
Yeah,
and coached very well, it seems. Yeah,
I think these guys are patriots. They want mass deportations, and they know that being on their best behavior and whatnot is how you conduct that. One more.
Can I bring one fascinating tidbit in? All right, let's roll this clip back if we can, Serge. So I had this go viral on Instagram. This clip got 15 some odd million views, and I was reading through the comments. Very funny. Somebody pointed out to me, it's like, yeah, this man's being detained by a little Hispanic woman, an Asian guy on the right, this fat black guy in front of us, and then a white guy. So it's a very diverse group of ICE agents who are detaining and taking this man away.
It's like a community college pamphlet is arresting you.
Look, the black guy, the Asian guy, the little Hispanic woman, the tall, fat white guy, the back right. So there's a very multicultural group of ICE agents who are enforcing our immigration laws outside of these courts. I think that's a fascinating aspect because usually these people would be accused of being racist, or now they're self-loathing, minority racists. I mean,
that must suck if you're like on the left. It's like when the melting pot begins to hate. The melting pot has now come full circle, and now there are guys.
There are a lot of very large, intimidating black ICE agents at these immigration courts. They hire big dudes.
I kind of want the brothers on the front line.
Yeah, there are a lot of
I kind of
big
want
dudes,
that.
and there are a lot of young guns too who like grab a guy and run away, and I'll barely be able to catch him on video because
Yeah,
it's like a young 23, 24, 25-year-old who's just excited to be there and excited to be on the job.
I'm sure ICE. I'm sure they're listening. I'm sure they've done this. They should really be scouting like the mid-major college football programs for like linebackers, because these guys aren't going to make the NFL. Like, and then I don't know what their job prospects look like. I think they could be really useful for ICE. I mean, they're quick, agile. Can lay a lick if they need to, if things get physical. I think if you're out there and you're within ICE hiring, I would consider tabling at these mid-major schools.
And
option.
There's a lot of downtime at the courts here. I'm usually staking out for at least an hour or so to get an arrest, and so are these ICE agents. So these guys are just chilling, and they're regular dudes. They're really bros. Yeah. They're cracking jokes to one another. They're laughing and palling around. So I know you only see them in the context of them grabbing somebody, but then on the off hours, we're just kicking back, cracking jokes to one another, having a chill time. These are just regular dudes, and a lot of them are viewers of Timcast. And
let's go.
So they've been a lot of very chill dudes. All of them follow my work, and I like to think they think I do a great job. And it's cool because I'll post something, and they'll be like, "Oh, funny video you posted of me last night." So
that's great, dude. I love it. I have one more because we can go over because we lost like 5 minutes. I just had like one more kind of, I don't know your thoughts on it because you've seen this because a lot of people are interacting with your tweets. I'm very frustrated. I brought it up earlier where you have this segment of the country who got behind Trump. A lot of these people are public figures who got behind Trump for other reasons, even though Trump's biggest issue is immigration. He made that very clear, and it always has been. And then now that these ICE raids are conducting, they get very uncomfortable. They start freaking out seeing these videos. And I'm sitting here like, who did you think you were voting for? Like, this is like his thing. This is why I voted for him. What has your reaction been? Are you seeing a lot of these guys that are kind of in the middle, supposedly, that are flaking because of these videos? I mean,
I think it's easy to support something in principle, and then like in the real world, caught on camera in its most dramatic effect and like in its worst case scenarios are harder. It's a harder pill for certain people to swallow. Most policy, when it's enacted, like you don't really see much of it,
Right.
But it's really eye capturing. I think it was inevitable that he was going to lose some people. And I also think it's important to notice that there's a sliding scale for how much people and what type of deportations people in our country support. So, for example, I think people, it's like a majority position for people to support people, DHS detaining and deporting people who got here in the past 2 years or have criminal records. But then I think you find decreasing support when you find, oh, what if the person had a family here? What if they have a child here? Then you start seeing support go down. And then, oh, what if it's a person who's been here for 20 years? Even if they don't have papers, a lot of Americans are still very sympathetic to people, illegal immigrants nonetheless, but people who still been here 20 years. You'll probably be under 50% for people who support deporting people like that. So I think you do see a sliding scale, and then as things get more visual, people can get a little bit more flaky on it. I think like another place where this effect is true, it's like people who are very pro-choice, but then when you see literal images of what an abortion really is in practice, the ghoulishness, gruesomeness of it can help sway someone's mind. And I also want to note that that's not actually my goal with the journalism here. As many people on the right accused me of like trying to garner sympathy for illegal immigrants through my work. I'm just trying to document the Trump administration's immigration policy in action and how that's panning out. A lot of people also told me that I shouldn't be posting this stuff and like that it's bad that I'm posting this because I will be deported soon enough. But I'll have you know that I'm a child of United States citizens. So.
Oh. Well, sorry to the people hoping that they had a chance there. No.
Although, hey, maybe we should start deporting people with American citizenship. I've actually seen a funny post where the meme where it was like, oh, just because you had a fudging rat infestation or a bug infestation that's in your house, right? That it was homeborn. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. You still have the infestation that you need to remove. Cancer is a so-called natural thing that your body can produce, but it doesn't mean that it should be there to stay. And it would actually be be harmful for you to keep it there.
You're setting me up by saying cancer and infestation. I disavow those, but I do think we should.
Was that a euphemism? I don't know.
I do think we should look at denaturalizing people like Zoran. These paperwork Americans are a big problem. Like that's why the term exists, paperwork American. They're American on a technicality versus people that have been here, that have stake in the country, et cetera, et cetera. And I do think people levying those accusations at you that you're like somehow trying to undermine our deportation operation, I think is just ridiculous. I think if anything, this is useful for people to see that, like, hey, they're actually doing things. Because I think the concern from a lot of people on the right is that we're not deporting enough, that we're not involved enough. And
we really aren't. I mean, as far as the courts go, I don't know if it caught it in the second part of the audio because I repeated myself again, but there's like something like 5 to 10 deportations, a relatively low amount given how many people come through the court and are actually eligible to be deported and detained, but ultimately aren't. I've sat in on many court cases where the judge will say that they are eligible for expedited removal, but the ICE agents didn't have them on their target list, or for one reason or another, if the processing center had too many people, or there's other litigation that is ongoing. There are many other eligible people to be deported at these courthouses that they aren't doing. It depends on how you look at it. That means there's a lot more to ramp up if the administration wanted to. So.
Yeah. Well, dude, thanks for joining me in studio. This is, again, the first ever in-person live show hit. This is great. We'll be back tomorrow at noon. Elaad, where can people find you to find more?
Yeah, Tate, thanks for giving me the opportunity to platform some of my immigration reporting. In addition to my White House reporting, you can find a lot more videos of my coverage at these courthouses and ICE activity at Elaad Eliahu at Instagram, on Instagram and Twitter, at Elaad Eliahu. Thank you guys for tuning in, and long live Tatecast.
Let's go. Well, yeah, we'll be back here tomorrow at noon for another hour, another Power Hour, Patriot Power Hour. We'll be back tonight for Timcast IRL at 8 p.m. That's going to be a great show. That's Matt's here tonight, right?
Matt Gaetz.
We have Matt Gaetz, the Matt Gaetz
representative.
So that's going to be a great show tonight. Be there. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Tate Brown, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you.